Well, good morning, everyone. I think we should go ahead and get started. We're right on our starting time, and with all the folks on the line, I want to be conscious of putting our time to good use. So let's go ahead and get rolling. Thanks for joining us today. This is one in a series of webinars or events that we've done here at Apex to really talk about 5 key workshops that Microsoft offers that are designed to help you start your adoption, accelerate your adoption around some key modern work and security technologies. So today we're going to talk about secure identities access. So this workshop is really designed to get in your environment, help improve your security posture, and use the tools that you might already own or that are easily accessible through your Office 365 subscription to do a lot of great identity protection and other security work in your environment. There's some crazy stat that 80% of our security exposure is via identity, right? People's passwords and working with a support call and getting a password reset and sort of that human engineering piece, conditional access or two-factor authentication. All of those things are in this space, and so that's what we'll spend our time talking about today. It'll sort of lead into a discussion about the workshop, and then obviously some key things that you can do working with us here at Apex. And really start your journey or continue your journey down this road. So let's talk for a couple of minutes just about what we're going to be up to today, and frankly, just a little bit about me. And so we'll talk about identity security, how important it is to have a strategy in this place, some goals and objectives that can really give you the metrics that feel good that you're making progress, right? Things like secure score. And then I'll talk about the security and identities, the secure identities and access workshop. It's kind of a mouthful, and how that can be used to drive the adoption. There's also a really important thing to know is that Microsoft and Apex have the ability to invest in you consuming this workshop, right? So when I talk about call to action and reaching out and contacting us, one of the reasons to contact us is we're going to be able to figure out if this is a paid for engagement by Microsoft. Microsoft makes these workshops available to customers in many scenarios. It's based off of a few different criteria, your size, your adoption rate, those kinds of things. But that's something that we can check for you. So whether it's a relatively low cost introduction and adoption workshop, or it's a no cost one, we certainly want to help you figure that out. I want you to walk away with a better understanding of the landscape. Why Apex, why Microsoft in this space. There's a lot of customers that I talk to that we pay for these engagements, we pay for their adoption, we even pay for licensing costs at times by retiring other, duplicate solutions. You have a standalone product in a certain space, maybe around multi-factor authentication, when you might already be paying for it as a part of Office 365. And so we look for those savings and look for those to be a way that we can finance, that we can fund these kinds of engagements with you. My name is Steve Thompson. Here at Apex, I'm our VP over Alliances and Solutions. What that means is I spend a lot of my time working with Microsoft, making sure we're going to market with the best solution offerings. Our people are trained. We've got the best information for you. We also bring other hardware and software vendors to the table. And so through our partnerships, whether it's Microsoft Teams Rooms or whether it's XDR security software, whatever it might be, we bring a team's worth of hardware and software to the table. The other side of my job, thinking about solutions, is offerings like this, right? Making sure, again, from top to bottom, we can position them, we can deliver them, we can support them in a meaningful way, and do that at great scale. And so we've got a long history in this space. been around a long time, you know, hundreds of customers, many hundreds of deployments, and great status with Microsoft and with other vendors as the experts they look to in our space. We're based in Southfield, Michigan. In all honesty, I'm the exception that proves the rule, living somewhere else. And that's true for our customers as well. While obviously, historically, a bulk of our customers have been in the Detroit metro area, we have customers nationwide. We even have some customers pushing us to be international. We're going to have to work on that one as we grow our business. But that last piece about us that I just want to call out, right? One of the ways that we measure ourselves, and frankly, one of the ways that we compensate our people is really around customer satisfaction. I don't think you'll find another organization that is more focused on satisfaction and customer success as a metric that we use internally to say, hey, how are we doing? So let's start talking about the Secure Identities and Access workshop. You know, here's the goal, a deep dive into foundational identity strategy tailored to your organization. One of the things when we talk about workshops is that they're very different from a demo or sort of a mock-up in that we actually work in your environment. We talk about your specific needs, your specific use cases, your specific user types. And because of that, these workshops are much more grounded in being relevant to your environment. It's a big upgrade from you know the point and click demo to something that actually resonates because it comes from your environment. And so at a high level, what do we do during these workshops? You know, we really want to learn about your priorities, your environment, key strategies for you, key stakeholders. Then we go through a discovery phase where we want to both educate and bring in information from your environment. The last two are really the key, right? We want to work with you to develop those next steps. Hey, where do we go? What's the low-hanging fruit? To me, identity is so much fun to work with customers on because the return on investment is measured in days, not even weeks, right? Turning on MFA for key roles, doing conditional access, you know, just being able to model some things that make a big difference really quickly in your environment. I'll talk about a few of those. And then where do you go next, right? Whether you partner with Apex, whether you give this as a roadmap to your internal technology team, whatever those next steps look like, workshops are focused on making sure that it's always tailored to where do you go from here, right? And so when it comes to that discovery, you know, whether it's third party or whether it's the applications you use, discovering everything that's out there. And then we talk about things like identity fundamentals, SSPR or self-service password reset, MFA or multi-factor authentication, really talking about those technologies that can drive security really quickly. And then deliver, you know, a security strategy and next steps that you can use, that you can partner with Apex to deliver, and something that is very actionable because it comes from your environment. I know a lot of times when I talk to customers and talk to customers over the years is that, you know, the case study, the white paper, you know, is an organization 50 times your size or within a very different industry or domain. Because the workshop is rooted in your environment, we don't run into any of those issues. There's a lot of detail here, but I left it in to give you a sense of kind of the flow. This workshop is a little bit different in that it's, you know, little bursts of activity, or maybe over a week or two, just gathering information, going back and forth, you know, delivering the presentations, making sure we're all level set on information and technology that's available, you know, and then having that big day where we do the education, where we deliver, you know, the information needed, get those experiences, and then go ahead and have our results and recommendations. Where do we go from here? And being able to show how you can roadmap out making progress towards where you want to go. And so when we're done, have a strategy related to cloud identity and say, how can I start moving to Azure Active Directory? Azure Active Directory is really the linchpin of much of what I'll talk about today and much of around what the workshop delivers. We still deal with customers that are in an on-prem or a hybrid kind of mode. Those guys looking actively to say, how can we get this into the cloud as much as possible? Unfortunately, oftentimes we discover there are third-party applications and databases or internal processes that rely on some of that legacy infrastructure. That's another place where we can help. Apex can be a strong partner in that space, saying, how do we migrate? How do we update? How do we sort of unlock the potential of modern, cloud technology and cloud tools in a world where you still got that warehouse app, running on a server in the basement kind of thing. And so it's really a linchpin to everything we do. Get you some high-level deployment plans with some design decisions already made. It accelerates your journey, or frankly starts your journey, right? I always like to, offer that opportunity to customers as well to say, hey, if we're new to this is a great starting point. The Microsoft workshop around identity security is a great way to jumpstart your adoption. And then that last key, next steps, right? What are we going to go do next? I know in my world, working with customers, I spend a lot of time talking about roadmaps, talking about sort of logical next steps. Maybe in your business, you think about it as, propensity to buy. And hey, if everybody buys X, then we know a lot of them then go buy Y, right? And you tailor marketing campaigns, or you tailor your sales strategy to it. A lot of times the same is true in technology, right? There are logical next steps based on the investments you're currently making. And we want to help you map those out as you move forward. There are some customer responsibilities, right? So the most successful workshops are where the customer is very engaged and is a high degree of partnership. That stakeholders and executive sponsors are all sort of aligned. Done a couple of ones that were suboptimal, right? Oftentimes it was because, the stakeholders were really excited and saw the value, but maybe executives or executive sponsorship wasn't there. I've also seen vice versa, right? Where executive sponsors, maybe a CIO has a vision, but there's a disconnect between them and staff. And so having that alignment, having access to key participants, being able to schedule these times and have the ability to work together is so key. That last one, if you've got the tools in your environment, if you've got the licensing in your environment, great. If not, there are ways that we can help, get those into the environment for usage. Oftentimes customers at this point will ask questions about sort of hands-on keyboard, who does what kinds of things. We're happy to work in either mode, right? We try not to be creepy when we're looking over your shoulder, but we're happy to do that. We're, only your employees are touching the tenant, or vice versa. We're happy to do the work as well when it comes to setting up the workshop. All right, so let's talk about the phases of the workshop. Really starts with the engagement setup, right? Kickoff meeting, going to feel a little bit like this, being able to get everything presented and kicked off. We want to have a business value conversation. We want to talk about secure score and posture assessment, and then do the application discovery presentation and setup. And so these key things really set the stage for what we're going to do. Let's drill into a couple of those. It's really key to set up Azure Active Directory. If you're not doing it today, we've got to get some information out and do application discovery to say, hey, what can we move? What can adapt to this new cloud world around Azure Active Directory? And so that's a key part of the pre-engagement setup. We've got some tools, we've got a health agent and migration scripts, cloud application discovery, MCAS, to say, hey, what applications are out there? This is a fun one. So MCAS will use things like your web proxy, firewall logs, in addition to user data, to be able to say what applications are people using, including web-based applications or software as a service applications. I've worked with some customers where we've had some fun discoveries where they realize that there's a department in an organization using Salesforce, right? But because they're going out through the web, because nothing is installed locally, IT had no idea that an application, a software as a service application, had a footprint like that in their environment. And so these are great tools to go ahead and discover what's going on in the environment. Then we move into the reporting phase, really get that discovery report, hey, what's on here, what's missing, what can we move? And then I think this is the key piece, right? Oftentimes customers are overwhelmed by the number of tasks at hand, right? I'm still old school enough, I write tasks down and then I say, well, what's the most important, right? Or what is number one on the list for different criteria? Maybe because it's easy, maybe because it has the highest ROI, maybe because it affects the most important users and gives them additional return on investment or flexibility. Whatever the criteria is, let's work together and figure out what that stack rank looks like when it comes to, hey, where are we going to go work first? And then we move into the design and planning phase. I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail, right? We want to present you an overview of Azure AD and application management, complete that discovery and say, hey, what are the prioritized applications? What are the high use applications? And like I said, you'll even maybe discover, a Dropbox contingency within your environment. While not necessarily in scope for this, that's great information for your team to take away and say, hey, do we have an education problem? Do we have a OneDrive rollout problem? Do we have a security issue we have to deal with? Lots of things can come out of these steps around application management. And then, we say, hey, where are we going to go first, right? What are those next steps and what do they look like in this space? We want to make sure everybody's up to speed on identity fundamentals, right? Saying, hey, what is, what do those integration scenarios look like? But what are also your hybrid identity options? Like I said, lots of customers are still in a world of third-party applications, custom written applications that do things like, contact domain controllers explicitly, right? Not great when you're looking to migrate, but at the same time, understanding that, knowing what we can do, what we can't do, what we need to migrate or sort of remediate is really critical. And you can see that this step and the others, what's our high level plan, right? Like, where do we go first? User-based, application-based, where are we going to start or continue this journey? So this is one of those low-hanging fruit. I've seen a lot of environments realize a ton of value really, really quickly by implementing SSPR, right? So self-service password reset. So when we move into Azure Active Directory and we turn on and configure SSPR, we give our user base a way to do what most of us are familiar with at this point. Hey, I forgot my password, I need to reset it. Remind me what my user ID is, make sure it's me, additional questions, conditional kinds of things to say, I want to be really sure that people are who they say they are when they're doing these resets. So for most people, we've gotten comfortable with this, whether it's a banking application or an insurance application, something with sensitive data for us in our personal lives. has these kinds of functionality, and users are comfortable with, or at least exposed to these almost on a daily basis. So SSPR allows you to turn this on in your environment relatively quickly. Same with MFA, right? Multi-factor authentication. I remember the days of tokens in the bottom of purses, with rotating numbers and an entire hardware rollout and third-party software and so forth. Most of us, though, are at a point, not only do we get this, but we're comfortable with it, right? I have lots of applications on my phone right now that, if I haven't been there in a while, it'll text me, make sure it's me, use some other factor other than just, a password in an app or whatever it might be. And so getting that turned on in your environment, hey, who do we target? Is it everybody? Is it key roles? Is it IT? And then define that high-level plan and high-level rollout. When you move into Azure Active Directory, SSPR, MFA, they're low-hanging fruit, right? They're built-in kinds of technologies. And this is where, like I mentioned before, we see a lot of sort of clawback when it comes to money relative to our customers, right? They look into their existing spend, whether it's software licensing, whether it's support costs, and are able to claw back some of that money and instead use it in other creative ways. I love conditional access. Part of the reason I love conditional access is, for me at least, it's very easy to talk about, right? Outlook rules for access to your network. Being able to say things like, hey, when someone who's an you don't have to say the hey part, that's just my, that's my verbal crutch, right? When you're an admin and you are accessing a device on our server network, I want to use multi-factor authentication and limit your session to 30 minutes. Easy to imagine scenarios that you can verbalize. When one of my salespeople wants to connect from a territory outside their normal sales territory, let's give them a multi-factor challenge, right? Or any criteria that you can imagine. Frankly, many customers, do things like, hey, if you're not on the company network, if you're not behind the firewall, let's just do MFA as a rule. And so using conditional access, you can set up those rules, you can set up those controls in a way that is really, really easy to understand, right? And so conditional access to me has a lot of that low-hanging fruit. It's an easy way to vastly improve your security policy and do it in a very, very quick way. High return on investment. Let's talk about passwordless, right? How do we move past passwords? How do we, use biometrics and multi-factor and, who you are and what kinds of things to get away from passwords? I don't know if you know, but it's Microsoft's formal recommendation at this point to say passwords never expire. That a good password today is a good password tomorrow, whether this is day 89 and tomorrow is day 90, right? Unfortunately, for some of you in regulated industries or in the public sector, regulations and laws haven't kept pace with the technology. You might have some of those regulatory requirements around passwords or password changes, but I know nothing gets me more frustrated than when I'm on a straightforward commerce site. Maybe I'm, buying a couple of bottles of wine from a winery in Napa, and it asks me for a 40-character password that mixes characters and is going to rotate every 30 days. Drives me bonkers, right? The best passwords are long, don't necessarily contain characters, but are known only to you because they're important only to you. And like I said, the current recommendation is that there isn't a need to change those on a time-based basis. If there's a problem, if you forget it, if there's a breach, absolutely, let's change everybody's password. But doing that on a timer isn't the recommendation any longer. And for many of us, can we get beyond passwords? and combine MFA with things we have, things we know, more and more every day. Whether I like it or not, I'm using my face, I'm using my thumbprint or my fingerprint in many, many different ways. Think about the applications on your phone where there might have been an original password, but now it's been subverted by other methods. Or I know I've got apps that once it confirms that I am on my phone and can answer a text from that same phone number, we just go right into setting up an account or creating my access. We also talk a little bit about endpoint. For many people, historically, security has been about the firewall and it's been about endpoint, something like Defender. And so we want to talk about endpoint specifically from that compliance, that conditional access, to say, hey, let's do health checks, let's do things that, gate your access to the network, or, make sure that required components are installed on the machine. And so on that workshop day, on that longer day we saw in the flow chart, we want to bring all this together and give you that end-to-end value conversation around the Microsoft Identity Platform. Again, for some folks, this is a new journey. For some folks, you might have bits and pieces of this coming from other places, but talk about how we can bring it all together. We also want to show you, right? Based on what you're looking at, let's talk about protecting corporate resources. Let's get experience with the technology in a hands-on, sort of live way. We've got great engineers and consultants that do this stuff every day. In addition to the content and the solutions and tools, you've got their years and years of experience that are brought to the table on workshop day. And it is absolutely that pivotal time where we experience these things with you, and then in turn deliver those results, recommendations, and next steps, right? Hey, where do you go from here, right? What are some high-level design decisions? Where do we go first? What are those strategic next steps? And selfishly, I'd love to help you with that, right? The folks here at Apex do these kinds of things every day, and because of that, we're a great partner in this space. When you're looking for help and partnership around driving this into the environment. Either way, the next steps, the key recommendations are really, really, they're the outcome of the workshop, right? That's why we all participate in it, and why we're all going to get some value out of it. And so why work with us? Tons of experience. We do these kinds of things, whether it's endpoint or identity. We've got the experience to assess, to deploy, and even to support. We've got a great managed services team that can help you work in this space on a day-to-day basis, even when those initial engagements are over. Got a great relationship with Microsoft. If I do say so myself, that's part of my job, making sure we're connected, we're current, we're trained, we're all of those kinds of things when it comes to the Microsoft relationship. We're also a CSP or a licensing provider in this space. Lots of customers find great value in having their licensing tied to their services and integration work, and sometimes even with their managed services. And so we can deliver that spectrum for you or for any of our customers. So what do I need you to do? Whether you're here with me live today, or whether you're watching this as a recording later, hey, contact your Apex account executive. If you're an existing customer, ask the question, I'm interested in the workshop. Can Microsoft fund it for me? We'll be happy to get those answers for you. If you're not currently a managed customer, drop us a note, whether it's to sales@apexdigital.com, or I've even got my email address up there. Let us know you're interested. We can do the legwork. Set up the engagement, check for funding, do those kinds of pieces to say, hey, we're here and we're ready to help. You can also check out the other workshop briefings that we're going to be doing. There's 5 total. Microsoft has about 20 or maybe about 24 workshops on their roster. We focus on 5, right? I think it's important as an organization to have a focused strategy, and we do what we're good at, right? And so this is one of the 5 that we've chosen to focus on for this year, right? And because of that, we're very, very deep on our expertise. rather than trying to do a little bit of everything, right? I think you want a partner that's going to be an expert, that's going to be committed to the space you're engaging in. So those are our key next steps, our call to action, kind of checking the question queue. Not seeing any questions right now, and it's better to be lucky than good, and so I'm kind of sticking the landing on 30 minutes. What I will leave you with is my email address, sthompson@apexdigital.com. If you have any questions, whether it's about this or anything else that Apex might do, feel free to drop me a line, but do definitely reach out. If this workshop is for you, if you're interested in what it can offer, please reach out to our team and see how we can help you. For now, thanks for joining us. Hope you found this informational, and I look forward to seeing you on our next workshop briefing.